Welcome back. You're watching Young Turks, and joining us now is a very special guest, a man who's invested in almost 60 companies, in companies like Skype, Brands for Friends, Nimbus. Mark Toulouse is now eyeing India as a potential market, so we decided to catch up with him to find out more about his India plans.
Co-founder and CEO of Luxembourg-based venture capital firm Mangrove Capital, Mark Toulouse has invested in about 60 companies in the internet and software space. Best known for his bet on Skype, Mark has also been scouting for opportunities in India. In 2011, Mangrove Capital invested in Nimbus, a leading communication and entertainment platform and global online apparel, the holding company of Indian shoe e-tailer BeStylish.com. With internet users in India touching the 100 million mark and growing, Mark is bullish on the Indian internet economy.
Well, Mark's here in India and he joins us now on Young Turks. Mark, appreciate you joining us here on CNBCTV18. You've invested in a bunch of companies, 60 companies, companies like Skype. What do you look for when you put your money into a company? What's the checklist that you have?
Well, the most important thing we look for in companies is the ambition and the vision of the founders. Because after all, any successful startup at the heart is successful founders. So we look number one for ambition, number two for vision, and third for drive.
Well, clearly you're on the lookout for internet companies, but within a group, how do you identify companies that are different, innovative, and stand out in the clutter?
Well, we have really, two strategies. One is we think half of our businesses have to be very weird. And when they're weird, there aren't that many competitors because they tend to be pretty unique ideas. Skype was an idea like that. At the time, if anybody had told you, you're going to make a phone call using a computer, people would have said, well, I think you're a bit crazy. That's really not going to work. The other half of the ideas, in fact, are ideas where there may be a lot of people, typically in the e-commerce space, where you're selling stuff. Again, it always comes back down to the same thing. It is the drive, the innovation, and the energy of the individuals who are going to run the company. Because we have an expression, that the cemetery is full of great ideas. At the end of the day, it's the people driving them that make all the difference.
Well, you made quite the killing with Skype. What made you bet big on Skype?
The ambition of the founders was really, I want to change the world. I want to make free calling for everybody. And that just kind of tickled my fancy when I met them the first time, and really the first meeting I had with them was the moment I said I want to invest in these guys, and we did it quickly, we did it fast, and of course history has a lot to say about it now, but vision was the most important thing.
So explain to us how Mangrove Capital nurtures its portfolio companies. What kind of support besides the money do you actually give?
We tend to think ourselves as pretty intrusive investors. We don't want to run the business, but by intrusive I mean is we have day-to-day conversations with our early stage investments, because in the internet particularly, these things are moving so fast, trends are changing so fast that you have to be on top of the matter very, very quickly. And so we think of our role, particularly at the early stage, is making sure that the founder sticks to his vision, but yet at the same time understands that there's some moving parts out there that he has to react to. So I'd say we're extremely involved. Most of the businesses we fund would look for that from an early stage investor. We're very honest. We usually tell the guys that we're going to invest in, say, make sure you speak to a couple of our other invested companies so that you understand the style we have. But we certainly don't want to run the business, but we want to be very involved and really that coach that allows them to go from dream to some extent the reality of what they're trying to deploy.
So put down a number, Mark. What is your investment outlay for India?
We have become very, very interested about India. As you know, we've invested in a company called Nimbus successfully here. We've also begun selling shoes. We invested last year into a company called BeStylish.com, and so we're extremely bullish about the Indian market. We believe that it is at a cusp, and we see our role as enabling, if you will, services to a much larger community. We focus very much on what we call free services. That's something like Nimbus, where you actually develop a product and you actually make it available for free, and so we give users the ability to use things without having to pay for it. We expect to be investing quite a lot in 2012 and through 2013 into the Indian market.
Also give us a sense of the kind of average investment that you're looking to make in individual companies.
We expect to be launching a fund in India at the end of the year or early next year. year. We expect that to be, though, on the tail end of our foundation. My partners and I have created a foundation, namely to empower women around the globe. And we want to make that our entry point into the Indian market before we set up our operations here. As an early stage investor, we think of a starting point as anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million. That's usually what we think to invest. Now, if we like the business, we'll continue investing through the life cycle of that business, usually up to $10 or $15 million.
So what, to your mind, makes Indian internet companies different from the others across the globe? Of course, it is the size of the Indian market, which is growing, currently hugely underpenetrated. But most second-generation Indian internet companies are largely focused on the e-commerce space, whereas in Europe and the US, we see more of Skype, Twitter, Facebook. So, where would you place India's emerging internet economy?
We will see in the next decade several billion-dollar companies coming out of India. That is, born in India and exporting everything they're doing. So that obviously the guys who are focusing on e-commerce, as I do with my shoes, that's because there's an untapped need here in the market to provide that service and have the internet do that. Innovation will come. We're beginning to see it in some of the companies we're looking at today. We fully expect, though, India to produce some of the most innovative companies in the next decade. And again, our vision of being able to, if you will, conquer the world with a product, which is what we did with Skype, we think we're going to find something like that in the next 10 years.
Mark, so far you've been operating largely in the European marketplace. How do you intend to adapt your investment strategy to cater to the entrepreneurial system, which in a sense is less organized and a bit more chaotic?
We spend half of our time in Europe, and so to some extent that's true. We also spend some of our time in Russia and in India. So we think of those two markets as being somewhat similar. Now, European or even the U.S. internet market is not super organized either, right? So I think sometimes we browbeat ourselves a bit too much here. Well, I think we have to first adapt is to make sure. So when we look at these internet businesses, we always think, well, if they can go global, fantastic. But obviously, if they can be successful in India, that's kind of a nice fallback position, right? So understanding the local market is important. And as I said, we have two investments here, which is what we're doing. As we get closer to the end of the year and believe we're going to be setting operations up here, obviously we're going to have Indian partners involved with us in making that happen, because obviously we have to be very, very sensitive to local cultures and obviously local ways of doing businesses.
So what's the next big thing on your agenda?
I think the dominance of the mobile device is such that I think you have to be spending a lot of time as a venture capitalist thinking about what type of ideas are going to come onto that thing. So businesses today that take advantage of the full strength of the mobile device, I think are businesses that I'm extremely interested in today. The other part that I'm interested in also as a group is the automobile side of it. So automobiles today are to be thought of as kind of dumb old computer terminals. In the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see so much innovation into the car. That's another space we look at.
Well, Mark, many thanks for joining us here on YoungTurks and sharing your thoughts and ideas with us.
My pleasure.
But on that note, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of YoungTurks. Next week, we will continue to explore India's retail revolution. Do send us your comment, feedback, and your suggestions to YoungTurks@network18online.com. You can follow us on our Twitter handle, Shireen@YT. Also join our Facebook page for all the updates and highlights on the show. Till then, from the entire team, goodbye and many thanks for watching.